has never responded to anything I've sent her multiple times. So I have no idea what's going on there, but never mind. It'll be one of those people who ends up sending me uploading a draft without actually sending it to me, and then wondering why I reject it, and she's getting all shirty. But that's the way things go. So let's progress. One of the things we didn't cover last week is the issue of disconnected users and disconnected customers. And this is a particular issue with organizations which are looking at different personas of people. I mean, over the last year, we've all sort of heard lots of stories about the difficulties with home working and homeschooling, and what happens with children who don't have access to laptops or don't have access to decent broadband, who are trying to do their lessons on a smartphone on the sofa and all these kind of things. And that's a big issue for education in this country, because unfortunately our politicians kind of assume that everybody's like them, and we all do that. I mean, we all, when we're doing any kind of peer review of whatever we're doing, we assume everybody is self-similar to ourselves, but we're not, and this can be a huge issue. I mean, last week we also spoke about Love Film closing down, and Amazon kind of giving a big shrug to those people who were complaining that they couldn't get access to Love Film anymore, and that kind of is one area which is very, very marginal service, right at the edges of the ranges, and you can't get a DVD by post. That's a bit annoying, but no one's going to have major problems with that. But this one I've got on the screen now, which is Dartford Tunnel, Dart Charge, is kind of interesting. Both of you have been through the Dartford Tunnel recently, or over the Dartford Crossing recently, since I started this. Yeah.
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 Not recently, but I have been across it. Yeah.
Yeah. And now, obviously, you don't chuck money in a bucket or hand it to a person. You have to pay online by midnight the day after you travel, which is not a huge issue. But the difficulty is that the only way to find out how to pay is to go online, and you can pay by phone. But if you want to pay by phone, you have to go online to get the phone number because it's not anywhere else. And another interesting issue that came up with this is that, there are two big things either side of the Dartford Crossing. To the south, you've got Gatwick Airport, and to the north, you've got Stansted Airport. Now, if you're going on a 2-week holiday with a car full of kids, and you're crossing over the crossing, and you kind of think, oh, I've got to make a note to pay my Dartford Tunnel crossing fees by midnight the day after I've done the crossing. And then you get to the airport, and you've got to go through all the check-in and everything else. You've got to drop off all the luggage, and you've got to get through security, you've got to get through passport control, and you've got to get through all of these things. And you end up, and you've got to get something to eat and drink, and you've got to shepherd the entire family around the departure lounges and find the right gates and everything else. One thing which is very easy for you to slip your mind is paying the Dart charge. So it's kind of big issues there. And I always thought when they did this, they should actually have little booths at the side there at the airport terminals, so you can actually pay it. Just touch screen your card and stuff like this. But no, they don't do that. So yeah, this big issue there, and obviously the Dartford Crossing is one particular aspect, but there are lots of issues there. I mean, I was reading a draft from a student this morning. There's only task one part of the draft she sent me, so don't worry, you're not massively late or anything like that. And she was talking about English heritage and National Trust and the Royal Horticultural Society, RHS. and talking about the market of those people and everything else. And it is unfortunate that those three organizations are very much perceived as being white, middle class, middle to older age groups, going for a nice walk in a nice garden with a scone, not necessarily being massively online. And so, online marketing and so forth is very difficult for those kind of organizations, because if they try and do it, then they still have to do all of their physical marketing as well, because there's going to be a substantial proportion of their customers who are disconnected from being online, and therefore are not going to do these things. So there's some big kind of issues in that area, and certainly when you're looking at your persona, I mean, both of you in the business to business world, so it's not such an issue because you're all connected, but later on in your lives, you may kind of say, oh yeah, well, we can do a fantastic Twitter campaign, or we can do a YouTube videos, and we can do all of these wonderful things, and yeah, this is great, digital is great for this. But if the persona of your user group is not somebody who is going to be using Instagram and is not going to be using YouTube to search for stuff and things like that, then you need to take into account these kind of issues. I mean, do either of you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I've got quite a bit. So firstly, with the Dartford crossing, I mean, I've got family in Kent, and whenever I drive down, which obviously I drove down this weekend, I'm quite lucky, I suppose. My husband just set up an account, and it automatically, I think, he's put like a certain amount on there, because obviously, at some point we're going to be traveling down. Yeah. It might even be a direct debit. It's in his name, so it just charges me automatically, and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah,
I think it's quite good, because if I'm driving somewhere and I've forgotten my purse, or I haven't got change on me or whatever, then knowing, and I know they used to take card payment, but knowing that it automatically comes out kind of takes that away. With regards to National Trust, English Heritage, and RHS, so I have been a member of all three at some point. Currently, RHS, I'm a member of them, and one of the reasons I became a member during lockdown was because they have a really good online gardening like option, where you can where they'll help you if you've got like problems with your plant or anything like that, and they are really, really good. Their online stuff's really good, I found personally. They've I suppose I mean, it's weird, because I suppose if it was kind of like my mum or my dad, or I had an elderly family member that were using it, then I can totally see why it would be difficult. But maybe they're trying to target slightly younger people, especially one of the things that they've really sort of improved on is sort of house plants. And they've got like a whole section on that now, which I think is trying to target younger members. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, it
is. I mean, obviously, people who live in flats, don't have gardens, but still want plants and stuff like this. And I think, obviously, as we talked about, lockdown issues and things like this, and we're both members of English Heritage and National Trust, and it's very interesting to see how they are doing things differently. For example, you now have to kind of pre-book if you want to go to either the gardens.
Oh yeah, that's a bit of a pain actually. If you live in one that's quite busy. Yeah. We tried quite a few times. I've tried to book Wimpole, and it's been absolutely like packed, not been able to book it. Yeah. And then I thought, I'll have a look at other sites, and Anglesey Gardens wasn't as busy, but yeah, I mean, you have to, like, you can't do it like the day before and kind of go, oh yeah, I'm going to look at the weather and just book it. And sometimes if you want to just book it on that day, even if they potentially had availability, you can't do it, and it's quite restricting.
It is, absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned kind of Anglesey, because it's one of the nearest ones to us. And they kind of close the bookings at about 16 hours in advance. You can, in theory, on a Monday morning, book for going on Tuesday and stuff like this, but they actually close the bookings quite early. So, if you're in the afternoon of it, if you're on Monday afternoon, you're thinking of going on Tuesday, then you've had it, because they don't open. they've closed their bookings, even though they may have spaces left. They just don't let you do it. Whereas English Heritage, in actual fact, let you book right up to the hour. So if you go if you go to Audley End, you can actually say, I want to go in 2 hours time, and they'll say, yeah, sure, we've got spaces, and they'll let you come through. And it's very interesting how both of them have kind of gone for, they've got different platforms behind them. One's got Eventbrite and one's got C-Tickets. So, you know, they've gone, and C-Tickets is a much more well-established environment and so forth, and Eventbrite is a little bit, you know, a bit lower budget. But it's very interesting how they're doing things differently. But of course, there's a lot of issues with, you know, the digitally disconnected, the older people who may not necessarily be happy doing those kind of things. And so you have kind of lots of issues there. And, you know, because we're going to be talking in terms of the high street and stuff like this, there are my parents and my parents-in-law, none of them have internet access at all. They don't even have a smartphone. And so therefore they, you know, need high streets, and they need, you know, physical banks and stuff like that. So
I was just saying, my mother-in-law, it's slightly different. They're in Malta, and she has problems with her bank out there. They've gone quite digital, and she's, you know, she uses the internet, but she's not comfortable using internet banking, for instance. And you know, the number of times my husband says, oh, you know, you have to do it online, or she calls up and they'll say you have to do it online, and, you know, she can't, you know, it's quite a small place, you know, especially with sort of COVID at the moment. If she's decided she doesn't, you know, she'd rather sort of isolate, it's, you know, it's very difficult, I think, you know.
It is, and you know, and a lot of banks are saying, well, okay, we want to go digital, we want to go paperless, we don't want to send out bank statements. I mean, I can't remember the last time I actually had a physical bank statement to deliver to, and I'm pretty much sure you're both the same. But there are huge swathes of the population who do want to do that, who want to go into branches, who do want to you know, get a paper statement so they can tick off all their checks, who still actually do want to use checks, for crying out loud. I mean, we do a bit of Amazon shopping for my mother-in-law, and every couple of weeks she sends us a paper check for the money. I'm thinking, oh my God, I mean, I've got to find a paying in slip, I've got to find an envelope, I've got to go to the bank or post office and pay this in. And
you can now pay them in on apps for some banks. So
for some banks, yeah, not
yeah. I did that the other day. It was quite fun, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, when I worked in a bank 30 years ago in the IT department of the bank, and they still had check clearing systems, and they would actually have these kind of grey painted milk floats trundling around the streets of London, literally full of checks, which they'd have been sorted. So, you know, you pay in a Barclays check into a NatWest account, a branch, that would have then gone through a variety of systems, and then they'd have put a bundle of these Barclays checks together, and they'd been trundled off in these little milk floats across London to the other bank clearing site. It was literally people shuffling paper. And we've gone a long way since then. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, people still want that stuff, you know. And if you're a new bank, you're a kind of a Metro or something like that, you say, right, we don't want all that stuff. We don't want checks. We don't want paper statements. We want most people to do most of their stuff online. If you look at kind of Mondo or Revolut or something like that, they just say, we don't even want any kind of branch at all. We want you to use the app. We don't even want a website. We just want you to use the app on your phone, and that's it. You know, they can do that to an extent because they can make a decision to say, no, the persona of the people we want are purely 100% online, the internet savvy people. We don't want to have to, you know, have that kind of backfill of non-digitally disconnected customers. But your average, you know, NatWest or Royal Bank of Scotland or Lloyds or whatever, they still have huge, great data centers, and they still have big print rooms sitting there printing out statements or not printing out statements, as most of us have gone paperless. But they've got all that investment still in that stuff. So they've got a big issue with that group of people. We'll talk about that in the pricing bit as well in a minute, because there's some interesting areas in that as well. But, you know, the thing to think about here is to consider the digitally disconnected. If you are making an explicit decision to ignore the digitally disconnected, then that's great. But if you're customer persona has a substantial proportion of those people, then you may need to kind of reconsider those things. I mean, I know we had a broadband outage here a couple of months ago, and we were out. Our broadband was down for 10 days, would you believe? And it was like going back to the Stone Age. It was terrible. Anyway, so think about it if you think it might be of use to you. Now, 7 Ps. The 7 Ps is one of these things which starts off with 4 Ps and then 5 Ps and then 7 Ps, and half the time that was done so that the people who'd invented the 4 Ps could write a new book and get everybody to buy the new version of the book. Planned obsolescence, great marketing strategy that for product marketing. But really, the reason why I wanted to cover the 7 Ps is because everybody loves using the 7 Ps in their assignments and in terms of making the marketing plan and so forth. It's a really interesting model to look at. And I really wanted to cover today some of the key aspects of this, which you need to consider in the digital world. Because so many of these things can be kind of combined and merged together. And the important thing to be able to do with the marketing in this level 4, is to actually look at how you can play with this model. Consider these models to be piles of Lego bricks. And yes, you can build the model as it's shown in the instruction manual, but you know, the next level from that is to take it and say, well, what else can we do with this? How else can we play with this Lego model and these pieces and make them more relevant to what we want? So, for example, hopefully you can see my arrow. You've got, you know, physical evidence, process, and place here. These kind of 3 here. In the digital world, it can be very easy to see that they are merged. Either 2 or 3 of them can be merged in different ways in the permutations and combinations according to what your business is and your service is. And again, things like place and promotion, you know, can be merged as well because of the way that we talk about how we you know, market through social media, or we have websites and so forth. I mean, the place where we're doing the marketing and the physical evidence can be, you know, the same site. If there's no physical delivery of something, then, you know, physical evidence shrinks down to virtually nothingness and becomes part of the process or becomes part of the place, depending on what you're looking at here. So, you know, for example, my last car insurance, I don't have a physical paper car insurance certificate because they're not needed anymore anywhere. So the only time I sort of see some kind of, you know, electronic-y thing is on at the end of the process of paying for it. I get an email which says, here it is, file it away if you want. But you never need to show it to anybody because, you know, if you're stopped by the police, they've already checked your car and said, yeah, this car's insured. They don't need to see your insurance certificate anymore. That's just nothing they need to worry about. If you want to tax your car, you go into the DVL website and they say, yeah, your car's insured. You never need to go to a post office and wave a scrappy bit of paper under somebody's nose and say, look at me, I've taxed my car. I've insured my car. So, you know, the physical evidence there is almost negligible. And it's common with so many other things. You know, we talk about bank statements and so forth. There's you know, and there's an interesting issue there with bank statements and stuff like this, in that if you look to prove your address, so if you go to somewhere and you need to prove that you live somewhere for opening a bank account, or, you know, doing anything else, they say, we want to see a utility bill in your name at your address, or a bank statement or in your name at your address. And if you've sort of signed up for paperless, then you don't have that physical evidence, and they are very sniffy about using PDFs and you know, electronic ones which you've printed off at home, or they can be quite sniffy about doing that. So you need to be very kind of careful and wary about that kind of thing, in that the kind of the technology and the way of life has moved on, but the the rules and regulations behind stuff has not moved on with it. We remortgaged last year, just switched from one deal to another, and obviously we couldn't go into the conveyancers, and everybody else said, we need you to go into the branch and prove your identity and with all these pieces of information. And people at the branch said, well, we're not doing that, we're not letting people in. So I said, well, how the hell are we going to do this? Because one person's saying, I've got to go to a place and get it physically, countersigned, and another place is saying, well, we're not letting you come in. And there must be a different rule for this. No, there isn't a different rule, because no one had thought of the different rules. So we need to be very careful about this kind of physical evidence stuff. I suppose, both of you guys are, in the business to business world, and for you guys, things like the product itself and the people, you could argue that products and people are very, very similar. If you're a business offering skills, or you're a business with particular expertise as part of your overall service wrap, then your people are part of your product. And then interestingly, your people can then become part of your promotion, because what you're then doing is to say, if you're an estate agent, you're saying, well, we've got people on the street who know the area, who know how to match the right people to the right properties, who can advise people, who can do all of the things to assist and so forth. And that's an interesting product differentiation from maybe an online estate agency or something like that. And you may want to kind of push that. If you're doing financial advice, then having financial advisors, or if you're in a pensions business, having your fund managers saying, we are the experts, or in the legal field, we know this stuff. We absolutely know our onions when it comes to intellectual property rights and so forth. Then they are part of your product, and they can become part of your promotion. So it's really important when you're looking at these things to actually look at the way that you can actually take all of these things and link them together and do interesting things with them, and so forth. So it can be quite enlightening to not just basically think, oh God, I've got to do something like the 7 Ps, I've got to do my marketing mix, and then writing down all 7 of them, and then kind of trying to literally blather on in each of the individual sections, just basically trying to work out how you can play them. Does that make any sense? Has that kind of given you some ideas and some thoughts?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. How would you think that would work with yourselves?
Yeah. Just thinking about it, because we're quite tech orientated. So obviously, just looking at the physical evidence side, yeah, I guess our people, and the people side, our people, help create the tech and also provide a lot of support for the products as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm making much sense. I'm just trying to think about it.
No, it's an interesting thing to think about. And for an example, I was on the 3.co.uk website, because my mother-in-law was having problems with her mobile phone. She needed it topped up. She's got a pay-as-you-go mobile phone. She only does texting and literally the odd phone call. And of course, she couldn't go into, she didn't want to go into a shop to buy cards with a scratch number on it and do all of that kind of stuff. And she doesn't have internet, so she couldn't do it online. So she asked me to do it. This link to the disconnected customers in the previous section. So I went online and registered her phone and all this kind of stuff. And the payment didn't go through for some reason. So I had to use the web chat and chatted to a person on the 3 site. And I must say that the 3 chat team are one of the best out of all of the various chat teams I've experienced. They are one of the better ones. And she was incredibly helpful with me. And she sort of said, oh, yeah, we kind of saw that, and then it failed. And oh, we'll have to try that again. And she gave me different links to try and stuff like this, which is great for me because, I've got like multiple screens and I've got, massive broadband. If you were at home, you couldn't do if, my mother-in-law couldn't have done it herself, but we did that and everything else. And at the end of that, she said, well, obviously, you're topping up with this phone on a regular basis. We see you're also a 3 customer for your own phone. Would you be interested in doing a kind of a linked SIM kind of deal where I give her a really, really cheap pay monthly SIM on my account, and she basically gets unlimited text and unlimited voice calls and stuff like that on her phone. And she was really, really helpful and gave me some ideas about this and some thoughts about this, and could actually, and right at the very end, deal with the whole process right up into to the last minute. And so she was part of the people side of things and part of the process side of things, but she was actually doing a great job in promoting the services and, giving some real kind of value to that overall mix. And so it was really kind of interesting to see how those kind of things can merge together. And companies who think about it in an integrated, holistic way can get a lot of benefit out of those things. And so, that's one of the interesting things that you can think about in here. Talking about price, we haven't talked about price at all. Price is one of the really interesting ones and the really kind of potentially scary elements of the 7 Ps. Because if you're doing stuff online, I mean, obviously for you guys, it's slightly less relevant because you're in the high skilled and so forth, and price doesn't really come into it. It's a case of, can you do the job? Are you going to do the job for me? And the price is pretty much the last thing. But in a lot of organizations, price is quite important. And
it's funny you say that because I actually don't even know what our products cost.
No,
it's just not something that we talk about in marketing at all for my company.
No, you don't, because you're talking about value. You're talking about value to the business, and the stuff is kind of invaluable in that it's, I need it, I'm going to buy it. What the price is, who cares? That's irrelevant because the cost of not doing it is so massive that I have to do it.
For us, price comes up when there are pitches and you're up against other firms with quite similar set of skills and what they're able to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Price is definitely something that we've come up against, especially with if you're up against maybe bigger firms that don't mind cutting their costs initially to get the work. That's actually a bit of a problem, I think, for us in some ways, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's something, if you're dealing with somebody that's approached you or you're potentially approaching them as such, it tends to be more when you're doing a big pitch and you've got several IP firms all up against each other. And as I said, maybe the skill set's quite similar, and it could be partially down to price. That could be, that could be it. That could be the make or break.
Absolutely. And I mean, so in terms of the IP stuff, some of the more basic, trademark registration, trademark defense kind of activity, which is, fairly, kind of sausage machine in that you file the paperwork and you occasionally get some queries back, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I know our company that we use charges about €1,000 a trademark for this kind of stuff. And so, there is a price to that, but that stuff can be kind of the loss leading kind of stuff, to say, well, yeah, sure, we can do that. And it's more paralegal kind of stuff. It's not actually kind of, major legal stuff to do that. In fact, I can actually register them myself because I know the forms and I know the processes, but I get someone else to do it for me because it's just better to do it that way. So, you can say, well, yeah, we can do that for you. We can manage all your trademarks, and we can, do all of the trademark tracking and all that kind of stuff for you, really, really low cost, because we're not actually, doing very much. We can automate a lot of that stuff. And, it's relatively straightforward. And in the aim to get the other more exciting business, the more profitable business, the more consultative, the more, highly skilled, highly rated stuff out of it as well. Because that's where you're looking at this kind of cross and upselling kind of approach to say, well, we're not only doing that, we're also doing this. And the great thing about cross and upselling is that you can have a service which is a loss leader or is basically just keeping itself going. It's not making any major profits. But if you do that and then you do something else, then the client is less likely to move away because they're thinking, well, I've got to get someone else to do this other stuff, and it's just a pain because there may not be specialists in that. We had a product that we ran in our organization back in the early days of cloud services. 1999 I ran this service, and it was a really, really cheap service. It was £1,500 per company per year for an antivirus service, and it was a cloud-based antivirus service. And our clients that we were usually dealing with were looking at the 6-7 figure contract values. So when I spoke to our sales team about this, I was product marketing for this service, and they said, well, what's the point? It's only 1,500, what, that barely pays for the meal out for these guys, stuff like this. And back in those days, it was kind of that kind of level. And I said, no, just trust me, this service is really, really valuable to you, even though it's not costing you very much. And it's almost something that, in a big deal, you'd probably discount down to zero, because 1,500, yeah, we'll give it away for zero. And the reason for doing this was because when it came to contract renewal for these internet connections that they were selling, as well as the virus scanning, they would get to the point where they say, well, we can get this for 10% less if we move to BT. And what are you going to do about that? And I said, well, the easiest thing to do is to respond and say, well, yeah, that's possible, and we can probably do you some kind of deal. But you do realize that if you move your internet services away from us, then your virus scanning service also stops. And I went, oh, what's that going to mean? Well, you're going to mean you're going to have to put in your own hardware, you're going to have to put in your own software, you're going to have to train up your support team to look after it, you're going to have to blah, 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 listing of stuff. And it's going to probably cost you 15, 20 grand to get an equivalent level of service for the service you're paying 1,500 for, or even zero for. And then suddenly the 10% discount on their internet connections was less relevant, and they wanted to stay with us. So we saw churn dramatically drop. And so you can play with your pricing in this way. And I mean, a lot of things in the world are like this. The mobile phone businesses are like this. And your organizations like BT and like Sky and so forth are all into what they call foreplay. And foreplay in this model is that they're looking at your broadband, they're looking at your TV, they're looking at your landline phone, less so these days, and your mobile. And the reason why they're looking at offering all of these things and bundling these things together, so you get £5 off your mobile phone contract if you've got broadband with us, and all these kind of deals that you see with Sky and everything else, free mobile of this level and so forth. And the reason they're doing this is because then you're having to, if you wanted to switch out because you saw a better deal from BT rather than Sky for your broadband or somebody else, then you'd have to disentangle this stuff. And disentangling these things can be really quite complicated. It can be just another level of fear, uncertainty, and doubt within that marketing model to say, is it still going to work? Am I going to be able to keep my number? Is it going to be a pain in the backside to move my mobile away? It's just going to cut me out. What's the value for me? And maybe that extra £1 a month is kind of worth it because I can't really be bothered to do those things. So this is why they're doing these things. And this is what things like, loss leading, and market penetration pricing can do for you to link these things together, to cross and upsell these things. Have you heard of freemium?
Is that where you offer a free service and then more money for a premium service? You have to pay for a premium service.
Yeah, it's like you basically your box or your your online storage type services, and they say, oh yeah, sure, you can have a free account with us with 1 gig of storage or whatever it is, and you think, oh great, well, 1 gig of storage, that'd be really useful. I can share photos of my kids with my parents and my parents-in-law and stuff like this. So I can't do that because they don't have internet, so they can't have seeing photos, but that's beside the point. And then you realize actually 1 gig's nothing. Oh, I just need to upgrade it to 10 gig or something along those lines. and that starts costing you money. And there's some really interesting things in the business to business world. You've probably heard the kind of QuickBooks adverts at the moment. They're doing QuickBooks adverts and stuff like this, where you get a 30-day free trial for you've got kind of like your small business accounting. Thinking, really, who's going to be hooked by that? Because in your first 30 days, all you're going to be doing is setting it up, putting all your invoices in there, putting all your direct payments in there, all of your kind of phone contract payments and your broadband payments, and your insurance, and setting up all of your suppliers and everything else. In the first 30 days, that's pretty much all you're going to be able to do with this stuff. It's not going to be something you can do easily. And of course, at the end of that 30 days, you think, oh God, so you now want me to pay for this. And if I don't pay for this, then all that work I've done for the last 30 days is just completely wasted. And that's kind of like the drug dealer strategy. Don't put that in an assignment, but because it's not a formal model. But the drug dealer strategy is very, very key in this environment, because I'm going to give you a free test. I'm going to give you a free trial. I'm going to give you a limited offer. I'm going to give you some of my stuff, but not all of my good stuff, until you're hooked. And then the prices go up. Then you have to buy all the other bits and pieces and all the other stuff on top of that. An interesting company which does this is a company called Canonical. I'm sure you probably haven't heard of Canonical. Canonical are the people who are behind Ubuntu. And Ubuntu is a Linux operating system, which is a kind of usually used in servers, in cloud services, in kind of back office systems and stuff like that. It's there to replace, your big high-end Windows and your high-end Mac OSs and stuff like this. So, if you're absolute tech nerds in an organization, they're bound to be a Linux nerds, because that's just what they are. If you see the ones with T-shirts in the office with the kind of weird code on the T-shirts, those are the guys who've got Linux on their laptops.
Yeah, my husband used to have it on our laptop. He's yeah.
Yeah.
So I've heard of it.
You've heard of it. Excellent. Well, Canonical have this ultimate freemium model, basically, in that they give their software away for free. And you only pay if you want support. So if you're a business and you've got a couple of hundred servers running this, then you pay for support. But if you're just an average Joe like me, you can download the latest version of Ubuntu, install it on a virtual brick of a laptop, and it will run as a perfectly adequate server. And I've got it on a few devices knocking around here, because I am that kind of tech nerd. I don't wear the T-shirts, but I've got the rest of the stuff there. And the reason why they can do this model is because once you've written a piece of software, then having it available for download is essentially a zero cost. There's the cost of allowing someone to download this software is, to all intents and purposes, zero. But the support contracts from the businesses are enough to keep them in business, because you only need a couple of hundred businesses buying support contracts at 100 grand each. And then you've got a decent business model, and you've got enough there to have people supporting the software. And of course, those support updates go into the software. And again, this is it's a similar kind of approach with the latest version of Mac OS and Windows 10, in that previously you had to upgrade to your latest version, you had to get rid of your Windows 7 and move it up to Windows 10, and so forth. Now they're just continually rolling through Windows 10 updates. And in fact, if you've got an old machine running on an old version of Windows, you can get free Windows 10, a proper fully licensed version of Windows 10 for free. They are just now in a situation where they just don't care. They just want to actually get rid of all of the old stuff, because it costs them too much to support it. And so they're not making any money out of it, and it's just giving them costs. They want everybody on Windows 10, and they're at the point where they're just giving it away now, just to get people off the old services. So freemium model can be really interesting. Price penetration models are immensely risky on the internet. And the reason why they're immensely risky is because, as we had last week, we talked about power. The buyer has now got much, much, much more power in all that they do. They can search the internet. They have got almost a level playing field. They can say, you know, you're trying to sell me that Ford Focus for 17,950. Hey, there's another Ford Focus up in Hartlepool for 17,000 dead. Why should I come to you? And this works in a lot of environments. And it's not just price comparison here. So we can talk about price comparison in a minute. This is about organizations who say, I'm going to price myself down to the bone in order to get all the business. And once I've got all the business and crushed my competition, then I can start raising my prices. And so basically I'm going to burn cash for a period of time, making a loss, making a loss, making a loss until everybody else disappears. And then I'll start making a profit. And this is essentially what Deliveroo and Just Eat and Uber are trying to do at the moment. They are basically out there burning money. They're all losing. I mean, how the hell can Just Eat and Deliveroo lose money over the last 12 months? I mean, if they can't make money in the last 12 months, when the hell are they going to make money, you'd say? But they are just out there doing this penetration pricing to try and kill their opposition. And then once they've killed the opposition and there is just one winner, then that winner, be that Deliveroo or Just Eat, will go to all of the takeaway companies and say, right, okay, you know, we had you down at, you know, £1 per item delivered. It's now going to cost you £2 per item delivered. And the other ones, and the takeaway companies are going to have no alternative but to come to them. The risk with this is that there is always somebody there who's willing to undercut you. And as you said before, you know, with your IP stuff, there are people who are willing to cut the costs to the bone to get the business, particularly in this kind of tender environment, in the hope of getting business later. But because the transaction costs of us looking for new suppliers are so much lower now than they were before, there'll always be somebody else willing to cut the prices to the bone. So you never have the ability to raise your prices because there'll always be, I mean, example, we used to run a toy shop. I think I told you times ago, we ran a toy shop. We were selling some stuff on eBay. We were selling some little painted model horses, and they were beautiful little model horses. And we were making good deals out of these. But the problem was that there would always be someone else who'd go, okay, you're selling them for $1.79 an item plus 99p postage. I'm going to sell them for $1.75 an item plus 90p postage, because I'm going to take over the whole market for these model toys on eBay, and then you'll disappear, then I can raise my prices back up again. But of course, there'll always be another guy coming along going, well, actually, I'll sell them for $1.65. I'll sell them for $1.60. I'll sell them for $1.55. And eventually you're pushing right down to virtually no profit or a loss. And you become essentially a busy fool because you're massively busy trying to churn out all of this stuff, really huge volumes of this stuff. And you're making literally pennies on every single item. And we were doing this, and at one point we were doing the maths and thinking, well, actually, given the cost of time it's taking us to do all of these orders and the amount of profit we're making on these orders, you could get a job in Starbucks and you'd make more money per hour than you would be selling stuff on eBay. And you know, it's quite tricky in those kind of environments to get this kind of price penetration kind of model working, because there will always be somebody out there willing to undercut you, particularly if you're in a market like Uber and Just Eat and Deliveroo, where you're trying to undercut all of the time. The basic premise behind what Deliveroo and Just Eat are doing is basically running away from a tiger. It's the kind of strategy of running away from a tiger. I don't have to be faster than the tiger. I just have to be faster than you, because then the tiger will catch you and eat you and give me time to run away. So,
do you think that Deliveroo or Just Eat would ever be profitable?
Well, this is interesting. The difficulty that they have is that their models aren't very scalable.
Mm.
Because if you've got people cycling around on bikes, there is a finite limit to the number of deliveries that somebody on a bike can make in an hour. And so therefore, if you double your sales, then you have to almost double the number of bikes, which doubles a large chunk of your cost base. The fixed costs of their website and their ordering management system, gets spread a bit thinner, but a large chunk of their cash is going to be always the bikes and the cyclists and all that kind of stuff. And you're getting to a point where, I don't know if you two have ever walked around Cambridge, but basically at certain times in early evening in Cambridge, you cannot move in the streets without being run over by a bloody Deliveroo bicycle, because they are scuttling around like crazy. And they've also got these electric kind of mopedy things as well, which are lethal because they're totally silent and they creep up behind you. But you're going to get saturation in terms of the potential customers as well. And the model of, are there enough people wanting to buy a £2.99 Subway sandwich plus £5 delivery in Cambridge to support the number of Deliveroo cyclists in Cambridge? And the numbers there are just so peculiar. I just cannot see a business model where they make profits. No.
That's interesting though, because I think, I don't know, people have got so used to the delivery of food now.
Yeah.
People love it. Like, it is an alternative to going out, especially, since COVID. I think, I don't know, I don't think it'll ever go away, but I wonder if it, it won't be Deliveroo, maybe Just Eat will take over and then someone else will come through, because it, there'll just be a turnover in the companies. Because I don't think the idea of having delivered food.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's been a sea change in that environment, but I think the difficulty is that the business models at the moment
just don't make sense.
I don't see a route to profit from those models, particularly when they're competing with each other.
Yeah.
Because as both of them have lost huge amounts of money, and in fact they've increased their losses over the last year. And you're thinking,
that's crazy, isn't it?
How? I mean, if there was every 12-month period where you should be absolutely on top of your game and on top of your profitability, it should be this year.
Yeah.
But it is the same with the supermarket food deliveries. Tesco's and stuff like that. Tesco's and Sainsbury's and places like that are losing money on their deliveries. They are still losing money on deliveries. Ocado is now profitable. But the reason because Ocado is profitable is because it doesn't have that fixed cost of all the supermarkets and all the staff in the supermarket keeping the supermarket shelves clean. They've got literally robots packing their stuff now. Your bags are packed by robots in Ocado warehouses now, and it's quite scary actually. You see these tiny little robots trundling around with crates in bags on top of them, and robot arms are putting your eggs and your stuff into your bags.
Well, it will be drones delivering Deliveroo, won't it?
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, yeah.
Oh, so I was just going to say, one of the big things with Ocado though is that actually a lot of the money that they've kind of made is their technology. So they've got like a completely separate branch to their I guess business. It's all of their technology. Is where they hold a lot of their money.
Yeah.
It's actually, more of a tech company, I guess, than
it is because Morrison's use it as well.
Yeah.
They're selling it to a lot of organisations outside the UK. Interestingly, the UK is one of the few countries where food delivery, supermarket shopping delivery has taken off. It hasn't taken it off in the States. For your Deliveroo kind of thing has in the cities, but food supermarket shopping hasn't, simply because of the kind of the demographics and the nature of the areas and the kind of spread out massive suburbs make it really, really impossible to get that density. And this is the issue with Deliveroo, Uber Eats and Ocado and everything else, is you need the sweet spot of density of customers and scalability of your business to match up. So you can say, right, we can put in a profitable number of cyclists or Ocado vans into that area in order to meet the demand in that area whilst still making a profit. And if the scalability of either of those two things doesn't quite work, then you can quite rapidly move into loss in those areas. It's all really fascinating stuff, and I think and I was discussing a bit away from marketing strategy here, but in terms of business strategy, it can be really interesting for all sorts of organizations to work out, is what we're doing actually profitable, or are we being busy fools? Are we actually just running just to keep still? And when we were selling on eBay, my wife and I were very much running to stay still, because we had this issue with penetration pricing. People were trying to just basically undercut us all of the time. So that was kind of really scary. But really, the 7 Ps are linked together with personalization, and this personalization is the 8th P, and it massively is relevant to digital, because digital gives us the ability to actually combine all of these elements very closely and very tightly together. If you go onto Amazon's website, it will have personalized suggestions based on your previous buying history. It will really understand what really turns you on, what you really like, what the kind of things you're always looking for, and it will give you suggestions and ideas in that area. It can be a slight issue come Christmas when my wife buys my mother-in-law her Andre Rio CDs, and then for the next couple of weeks afterwards, the Andre Rio DVDs and CDs and everything else is up in her recommended list, which she absolutely hates. But these things help us, personalize. And this comes down to, going onto the Sky website, and you get the personalized deals from yourselves, and Sky say, hey, Carl, you've been with us for 8 years. You get some special offers, you get some treats, free movie rentals and stuff like this, because they know who I am, they know what I'm going for, and they can make the right suggestions for me, and so on. So it can be really valuable in terms of all of these pieces. People who bought this also bought that. So, this, if that, then this, IFTTT. If the person who bought that bought this, then you who bought that might also want to buy this. So it's recommendations both at your personal level. So you bought some Andre Rieu CDs last month, maybe you want another one this month. Or people who bought HP printers also bought smart hubs, and so therefore we're going to suggest smart hubs for you, or whatever it happens to be. So this personalization could be really valuable, and it cuts across a lot of these pieces all the way through. One-click buying on Amazon is part of this changing the process. We know who you are, we know what your payment details are, we know your address. Just push the button, reduce the friction in that transaction, make it easier for you to buy from us than it is to go somewhere else, even if somewhere else might charge you £1 less. Because we're doing it for you, we're taking away all the nasty pain of having to fill in your details and remember your card numbers and stuff like this. Don't worry about pretty little head about remembering your card numbers. We can do that for you. And whereas if you went to another website, a nasty other website somewhere else, you'd have to fill in all that details and register and get a new password and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to do that. You want to stay with us. So, this is kind of invidious kind of activity going on there in this personalization, which we can see everywhere we go. And a lot of times when I talk about personalization, people are like, oh yeah, we do personalization. We collect people's names, and when we send out mailing lists, we put dear first name, last name, and stuff like that. That isn't really personalization. What you're looking to do here is to really tailor the messaging, tailor the content directly. Example of this, we are running our major annual conference, TNC 21, in June. This year it's going to be an online event. Usually it's a physical event. Usually we have about 800 people from literally all around the world. I think we had something like 79 countries turning up at TNC 19. So literally all around the world turning up at this event. This year, obviously, it's going to be online. And we've got a range of sponsors who are paying for the privilege of supporting us and getting access to these people. And one of the things that these guys are going to be doing is they're going to be running technical workshops, because we're a bunch of techies, just tragic techies. So we're going to be running these technical workshops. And what we're going to do is, obviously, after GDPR and after the personalization issue and everything else, and sharing data and everything else, if people have ticked the right box, we can send the sponsors the list of, these are the attendees who've said, yes, we're happy for our details to be shared. One of the tags we've got on that is whether this is their first time at TNC or not. And the reason why we put that tag on there is because this time it's going to be online registration. It's a free registration. We're not having to charge people for it. But we wanted this extra tag of information so that we could identify where we were getting into new marketplaces. So whether we were getting to people who would not normally be able or willing to spend 2,000 euros to come to our event, and are actually, doing a couple of hours of it from home. And we can then identify whether those people who are first timers are spending more time or less time on the conference site and all this kind of stuff. So it's a hugely valuable tag of information. But we're sending this tag of information to the sponsors, and the sponsors who are going to promoting their technical workshops can say, as a regular at TNC, you will know that we have these technical workshops and they're immensely popular and they give you a great insight in blah, 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 blah. So they'll be able to personalize the message for those ones. For the newbies, they'll say, this is your first time at TNC, so it's a great opportunity to find out more about how we work with the research and education community. So they can very tightly personalize the information just based on that one tag. And we're experimenting with it this year and see if it's going to work. But looking at those kind of pieces of information and saying, did that help us? Did that give us any more information? Did that give us any more insight? It's going to be really quite powerful to us. Okay, we spent nearly an hour talking on one slide there. It's quite cool. So at the 8th P, personalization. It's marketing to an audience of one. It is all about, or even pretending to market to an audience of one. So Amazon have immensely personalized relationships with all of us. But they haven't got loads and loads of people sitting there creating customized emails for each of us. Thousands of Amazon elves tapping away furiously creating new emails for each of us. It is all programmatic. It is all automated. So they're actually really pretending, and they're just basically filling in the blank spaces in their emails and structuring their emails and structuring their marketing to make it look as if it's personalized to us. And of course, what they're getting a lot of this from is social media and web browsing. It's all of this data that we're producing and we're giving away for free. And one of you probably have both experienced this before recently. Every single website you go to says, take a look at our cookies policy and please approve our cookie policy. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you actually check that? Do you ever customize it and go through, do I want the functional ones? Do I want the
Yeah, I do. If they're like asking for data, then I either do reject it all, and some of them don't like it when you try and do that, or I'll just go through and I'll.
Yeah, so you're actually one of the good ones who performs good data hygiene.
Yeah, not always. That's my husband. He's like, you should do, especially if we're looking at something together. He's like, no, don't, go through it, check it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And keep a bit more.
I definitely do try to, but sometimes if you're in a hurry, you're just like, yeah, fine, I'll accept it, move on.
Yeah, this is it. Especially if you're on your phone or on your tablet, you're thinking, oh God, no, I just want to get in, get the information I want and get out again. And it's way too easy just to go, yeah, I accept that. Just push the button in order to get rid of the message. And I would actually argue that these kind of GDPR rule-based things have actually damaged our data privacy much more than the previous policies, because people are now just going, oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah, just give me the stuff I wanted. Okay, I just wanted to read about Britney Spears and her breakup with her father. I don't. Just accept the cookies, and then of course you're stuffed for decades afterwards with useless information and stuff like this. So it's a really big issue there. So we can actually use this data, but this is really kind of dangerous stuff as well. And this is where the kind of the personalization rule of market unto others as you would be marketed unto yourself comes in. So you're looking at stuff and go, yeah, I'd really love all this information, but if someone actually was asking me for this information or asking my husband for this information, would he be pushing the reject button furiously and souring our relationship? And this is what we have to do is to make sure that this relationship is not soured by abuse and misuse. One of the things
I was going to say, it's a shame really, because sometimes you'll go onto the same site and, you know, and they'll just, you know, or maybe you've already done it and it will come up again. It's almost like they just don't take no for an answer, which is a bit annoying.
There's a couple of those ones knocking about now where there's this kind of thing where it says, I can't remember the exact wording they have. It says, we want to push you notifications. Whoever accepts the push notifications? No one ever accepts those push notifications. And then you get all of these error messages popping up and you have to do cancels and stuff like this. And it's really, really annoying. And it's just somebody just hasn't worked out how to do this stuff properly yet. So, but we need to worry about this. One of the things that I used to do a long time ago, before GDPR, was I had my own domain name. And so if I had to register or sign up with a site, so if I had to register with the Times, I'd put carl.meyer.times at my domain name. And then if it was switching with the Guardian, I'd put carl.meyer.guardian and in my domain name. And because of the way that the system worked, all of those messages came into my home inbox anyway. But what I could tell is if that someone had actually then sold on or shared my data without my permission, I would see the junk mails coming in from carl.meyer.times. And I go, oh, that was the Times who did that. They're the bastards who sold my information. So I could track it that way. But of course, everyone's a lot cleverer now. And so it's not so easy to do. So, but we need to, this relevance in here is to make sure that what we're doing is relevant to the user. And so, you know, there's some big issues going on here. My daughter signed up to free Wi-Fi in the Light Cinema in Cambridge. So now I get loads and loads of 10-pin bowling messages coming through, which is really annoying. Again, she signed up for the Wi-Fi in the Grand Arcade. Now, interestingly, this came as an email, but it came as an email after I'd left the Grand Arcade. It came an hour later when I'd already gone home. So how they expected me to buy their perfumes in the Penhaligon shop in the Grand Arcade when I'd already literally left. It just seemed to be a bizarre thing to do there. And particularly in the States, this is a particular issue in the States, that they can actually track and triangulate where you are in a shopping mall based on your mobile phone, particularly if you sign into the free Wi-Fi in the site. And, you know, arguably they could use that for, you know, if there's an emergency, if there's a fire or the roof collapses or something like that, be able to track all the people in there. Great, yeah, fantastic. Safety, fine, great, great. Why wouldn't we want to have that piece of safety information stored away? Of course, they can also use it to say, oh, you're walking past the Costa and you get a ping on your phone as a notification to say, hey, did you realize you can go large for free in the next 30 minutes? And you look up and, oh, actually, I'm right outside a coffee shop. So
it's funny. I, the other day, was in a black cab. Whilst I was in the black cab, I got a message from my Uber app being like, you can get a discount or something on Uber rides.
Yeah.
And I was like, they definitely know that I'm not in an Uber, but I'm in a cab. Like somehow they know.
Absolutely, and they can easily find this information out. The ridiculous situation is, and I don't know how it is, but my wife and my daughter are both here at the moment because my daughter hasn't gone back to university just yet. And there seems to be some kind of intimate link between their systems. in that if my wife is searching for some things online, then promoted ads in Instagram and Facebook will turn up in my daughter's Instagram and Facebook feeds for exactly the same product. It's quite frightening. Again, they shouldn't really be doing that at all, because everybody's an individual and personally identifiable information should not be shared. So, you know, my wife isn't browsing stuff that she doesn't want my daughter to see, thankfully, but it, you know, potentially is there. And of course, you see a lot of this on remarketing and retargeting materials. So if you go to a website, so if you go to John Lewis and you start looking at TVs on the John Lewis website, and then you go to the Guardian, or you go into your Outlook website, you will see personalized adverts for those products turning up, you know, inside articles on Guardian or down the sidebar of your Outlook webpage, which is fine if it's a TV from John Lewis. It's not quite so good if it's Reed Employment Agency remarketing to you at your desktop in your office, but we've all been there, haven't we? And so therefore we have this issue of, when does personalization become stalking? I spoke a couple of weeks ago about Victoria TV program and me suddenly getting promoted messages about Lord Palmerston's biography, based on the fact that I'd been talking next to Alexa about this, and she started flashing there. I said, Alexa, not Alexa, but she still thought about it. And they're listening in all the time. And Amazon will say that they're not, but they are, and we know they are. So we have to worry about this right to be forgotten and the GDPR issues. And I'm sure you've both had your GDPR certifications and all that kind of stuff sorted out. Have you? You both been through the GDPR mill?
Yeah, training, compulsory training at work.
Oh yeah, all good stuff. Absolutely, all good stuff. We had it done electronically, obviously, because everything is, and it just seemed to be the correct answer was always the most costly and the most complex answer on the list. And so you could just look, what is the most complicated answer on there? What's the most costly? What thing would cost the company the most money? That one. Right, I'll select that as the option. And 90% of the time, you got the right one just by picking the most expensive one. So really some interesting stuff going on in that area. So when we're talking about promotion, and when we're talking about all of our marketing activities, in fact, not just promotion in the 7 Ps, but actually all of the marketing activity, one of the key things that we need to look at is identifying the audience, identifying who we're talking to, and what we're going to say to them. And that actually then drives the method. So we shouldn't be looking at a social media strategy. We shouldn't be looking at a SEO strategy. We shouldn't be looking at a pay-per-click promotion strategy. We should be saying, who are we trying to market to? And that then, and who are they? What do they want? What do we have to say to them? What are the messages that we want to give them? And that drives the method and the channels that we use to get to those people. And unfortunately, a lot of digital, certainly over the last few years, has all been, we need a social media strategy. We need a strategy for our YouTube channel. We need to create a TikTok following and all this kind of stuff. No, you've got to look at the audience first. And it comes down to the right audience with the right message at the right time through the right channel in that order. So it's audience, message, time, and channel. And time there is not just calendar or clock time. It could be time through the customer journey. So there are people who don't know who you are. You'll be needing to say different things to people who don't know who you are, to people who do know who you are, or existing customers. So the time in the journey is important, not we have to send the messages out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon so that people get them when they're at home or something. It's at what phase of the journey they are. And the last one of those is actually the channel or the method. It's the absolute last one that we consider, because all of the others drive which channels are most appropriate. If we're talking to 75-year-olds, then we're not looking at TikTok. We're not looking at Instagram. We are looking at, you know, Google, paid clicks, SEO, or we're looking at maybe YouTube, or maybe Facebook. Facebook has got a quite old profile now, age profile now. But you're looking at different profiles and different channels according to your audience and according to what they're doing. LinkedIn is a huge opportunity for business-to-business marketing. Business-to-business marketing and LinkedIn work really well together because they do fit neatly together. So, but if you know your audience is business to business, it's, you know, business owners, small business owners, and so forth, they're going to be on LinkedIn all the time because that's their club, that's where they talk, that's where they chat, that's where they share, and so that's where you should be butting into those conversations with channel. And the final one there, which unfortunately is white on yellow, but never mind, is measurement. We need to be able to measure what's going on. We need to be able to identify key performance indicators in what we're doing, so that when we can then look back and go, did we do that right? How can we improve it? How can we loop through again, circular? I'm waving my arms, I apologize, I'm waving my arms, and usually if you're sitting in a room with me, you'll see me do the full on juggling act at this moment in time. But you can, this circular motion here, to look back and go, is that the right method? Is that the right audience? And this is why we've got this audience tag on our TNC mails. Are we looking at splitting that audience? Are we looking at different people signing up for the first time compared to the old timers? The regulars have been 9, 10 times and stuff like this. Are they doing different things? Are they behaving differently? Do we need to change our marketing to market to those peoples differently? And that's really important. And without the information, without those KPIs, we have no idea if what we're doing is the right thing. There's a process in this circular process here called Kaizen, K-A-I-Z-E-N, K-A-I-Z-E-N, which is a Japanese process, which they use in manufacturing for the process of continual improvement. And Kaizen really works well in terms of this tracking and tracing and monitoring and controlling our activities, because it is all about this reflective nature and this cyclical process of continually changing, continually updating, continually tweaking, continually perfecting our marketing activities. So it's a really good concept to kind of consider in there. So a lot of people, when I talk about marketing and when I talk to my parents-in-law about marketing, and when I talk to my daughter about marketing, she often does this just to wind me up, I'm thinking, considers that basically I'm down here. I'm designing logos. I'm printing stress balls. I'm making sure we have enough promotional pens for our meeting rooms. I'm maybe, if I'm really, really cool, doing a little bit of web design. They think we're all down right at this very end of the process down here. But in actual fact, we have all these other things that we're doing in the earlier stages of business. We're doing the competitive marketplace, the research the user needs, we're checking those out, sharing that information, analyzing that information. Then we're kind of developing the message and so forth. And this is a technical one, so we're talking about user interface, but process can fit into there as well. So you can look at processing changes and so forth. We're looking all the way through the whole journey of a product, or the whole journey of a service, the whole journey of a company is impacted by digital marketing, by what we do. So it's really quite exciting what we're doing in this environment. And I think we're going to finish there for today. The next slides are on data, which we've already covered about GDPR and stuff like that. So I don't think we need to cover those specifically. Has that been interesting? We've talked around in depth about a very small amount of stuff, but I think it's hopefully been of use to you in that respect.
Yes, definitely. That was
Cool.
really good. Thank you.
No problem at all. I think it's a good place to stop, actually, because the data stuff, I think we've already covered in terms of personalization, GDPR and stuff like that. And you've got some slides there which would be useful, but I don't think we need to talk through those. But I think that's really good. So what I'm going to do is I shall see you all. I'm going to get this processed and I'll upload it onto the website hopefully tomorrow. and we'll see each other again on Monday. That's good for you.
Cool. I might be slightly late. I'm donating blood on Monday afternoon,
Oh.
so hopefully I'll be back in time. I should be. I had it booked in ages ago before this started, so sorry about that.
Don't worry, we'll chat amongst ourselves. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Do you
Take
mind
care.
me asking quickly?
Oh, no problem.
Yes, okay. It's just about the actual when the assignments due.
Yep.
I thought that it was going to be December, and I know that some of my dates on my calendar have been wrong. So they changed the planning campaigns assessment dates.
Right.
Am I right in thinking it is December that this one's due?
There's a December one. There is also a September one.
Yeah, that might be a little bit tight. I'm just because I was just looking at the dates.
I think mine says December as well.
Yeah.
Oh, does it? Okay, mine's perhaps wrong then.
I was assuming that both of you were December. You can do either the September or the December one. It's entirely up to you. I'm very happy to support you on both of those. That's not a problem at all. Cool. If you're doing, I would always say only do one at a time.
Yeah. Well, I literally have my planning campaigns final deadlines on the 30th of June. And then the draft deadline for the September deadline is 22nd of July. So I think it's a bit tight.
No problem at all. Speak to Shane or Angie, and they'll update your system to be whichever ones you are actually doing. That's not a problem at all.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I shall see you. Have a great rest of the week, and I shall see you all on Monday. Okay.
Fantastic. Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.